Hello, everyone. Welcome to one of our Music for Self-Isolation chats today. It is a pleasure to welcome Katherine Carleton. Katherine is the Executive Director of Orchestras Canada. She has been in the music field for over 30 years as a clarinetist, teacher, academic administrator, granting officer, and orchestra manager. Katherine is well known within the Canadian music community for her advocacy work, and that led to her receiving becoming a member of the Order of Canada in December of 2016. So much deserved for the years of work that she's put into maintaining our classical music field here in Canada. Katherine, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's really great to be here, and I'm honored to be part of this project, Frank.
Well, it's been great to have you. As some of the viewers might know, you are quite passionate clarinetist, both for B flat and bass, and so much so you performed and posted two performances of two of the clarinet pieces for Music for Self-Isolation.
It was early on when I saw that you were doing this project. I think my first question was bass clarinet, and I think the B flat clarinet work emerged first, and bass clarinet came second. And I particularly appreciated your appreciation of the low C on the bass clarinet.
I love the low end of the bass clarinet. It's one of my favorite instruments. And when I started picking instruments that I was going to compose for, it was on the list for sure. So, but I love composing for the bass clarinet. It's such a beautiful sound. Yeah.
It is. It took me a while to come around to the dark side. Bass clarinet was a source of terror, very, in the first phase of my performing life, uh, public school, high school, university music degree. Um, Periodically, I would need to pick up a bass clarinet. It wasn't something that I took seriously. I saw it as a demotion, and the instrument responded in kind. When you hear a bass clarinet squeak, that is truly one of the more terrifying sounds that I think there is in the world. Some people say that a crying baby is the most terrifying sound, but I'd say a bass clarinet squeak is right up there. And it took me a while. I quit playing for 25 years and picked up the clarinet again in 2012. A couple of years later, I was invited to play in a community theater production of Sweeney Todd, and the part was for E flat clarinet, clarinet, and bass. I had an E flat, I liked playing it. I have obviously the full range of soprano clarinets, but the bass clarinet was that was an adventure. I needed to acquire a reliable instrument, and I needed to spend rather a lot of time working on it, and then my heart, uh, it stole my heart, is essentially what happened. But there were a couple of months when I was first working on the instrument when, um, I was playing Beatles medleys on bass clarinet just to bring out the melodic aspects and start to develop a bit of a sound. This was not, I wasn't starting with great classics of the bass clarinet repertoire. I was really just trying to start with getting to know you. And as I say, uh, love happened, and the rest is history.
What an amazing journey. What an amazing journey. And I love all the clarinets. They all have a very unique timbre to them. It's quite an interesting family of instruments. When you look back at when basically everything went down, and I think it was late March and so forth, what was, if you can go back in time, what was your feelings back then, both as a musician, as an advocate for the arts, and an administrator? What were you thinking back then?
So I'll give you two snapshots. On the 26th of February, I was in Ottawa with a group of other orchestra folks from across the country, meeting with members of Parliament. And we were carrying stories of the contributions that orchestras make to Canadian communities, and talking about policies that would be useful in terms of helping orchestras do more for more people. And I got a phone call in between meetings from Paul Dornian, the CEO of the Calgary Philharmonic, saying, I think we should pull together a meeting to talk about COVID-19 and how different orchestras are planning for what's coming. We had a quick chat about that. I said, Paul, I'm on it. And we proceeded to find a date and a time for a call with people from across Canada about planning for COVID-19 and the potential impact on Canadian orchestras. Now, I've lived through H1N1, I've lived through SARS, so I thought, all right, we're going to be talking about hand sanitizer, and we're going to be talking about, who knows what we're going to be talking about, but a series of short-term, modest tactics that will enable things to carry on. Snapshot 2 is Thursday, the 12th of March, when the call is actually taking place. And we are connected on Zoom. There are about 40 people on the line, orchestra management people from across Canada. And even as the conversation was going on, people were running towards the person on the call with notes saying the medical officer of health has just said. And so during that call, the province of Quebec restricted gatherings. During that call, the city of Toronto and the province of Ontario said, we highly recommend that you restrict all public gatherings. And it was like watching a bowling ball roll across the country and close concerts down. It was one of the most extraordinary, if there's a documentary about my life, which there will not be, but if there were one, this would be one of the moments where we watched the world as we thought it was change completely. And we watched the impact from coast to coast to coast. As people said, we have to cancel tonight's concert, we have to cancel this weekend's concerts, there we go. And it went from strong recommendation to thou shalt very, very quickly in the very early stages of the pandemic. So, I, like everyone else I know, has taken, I live my entire life online now. I connect with friends, I connect with colleagues, I connect with music, I connect with a community of teachers, collaborators, it's all online. And my personal festival of online started the evening of the 12th of March. I went home after what was really one of the more unusual days in the office, and noted that the Philadelphia Orchestra with Yannick Nézet-Séguin were performing a full stage empty hall concert at the Kimmel Center in Philadelphia, and I sat down and watched Yannick and the fabulous Philadelphians perform Beethoven Symphonies 5 and 6. I felt like I was on the edge of a precipice watching the last concerts I might ever see. Shortly thereafter, it became inadvisable to convene orchestras. And then we were off to, what do we do? How do we respond? And as I've said before, it is both a management challenge, a financial challenge, a logistics challenge, but it's also a challenge of purpose and a crisis of purpose. If the thing we do is about bringing mid-sized groups of people together in close proximity on stage to perform for large groups of people in close proximity in a concert hall, we are suddenly out of business. So, from a personal perspective, I'd say the internet is a home for me, but that has very much expanded during the time of the pandemic. I was part of an Etude of the Week group on Facebook. I'm still part of that group, and gosh darn, I'm doing that. I know people from around the world who are clarinet players and teachers, and I've had some amazing online convenings and learning opportunities with them through this period of time, because everybody's home. Nobody is as busy in the traditional ways as they once were. And just the sheer wealth of sharing of knowledge and perspective and the accessibility of that at this point is nothing short of jaw-dropping. This is, in many ways, almost the very best time to be a committed amateur musician because of the access that this time has provided me to really stunning people who ordinarily I would not have the opportunity to connect with. So that's been amazing. It's been a feast. What it also means is that many of the things that I was doing on a weekly basis, all of these things came to a profound and crashing halt. And my life online enriched and intensified.
It's quite interesting. It's quite interesting how in moments of crisis, humans will figure out ways to make their situation better, right? And reaching out to others using technology. I mean, that's been a real big theme for me in this pandemic, right? I mean, can you imagine if there was no technology? If this was, say, you and I are a certain age to remember where there was no internet.
Yes.
And can you imagine this happening? What the world would be like, or society would be like, if we didn't have the internet and we had to deal with this?
Well, let me tell you one of the other things that I've done through this period of time. Again, facilitated by technology, but not, it was inspired by technology, facilitated by technology, but not dependent on technology. I was listening to the New Yorker podcast, and David Remnick, the extraordinary polymath editor of the New Yorker, was interviewing someone who writes for them on a fairly regular basis, who'd started a project of a group reading War and Peace together. And the idea was, get the book, chow through about 15 pages a day, possibly tweet your thoughts on it. Now, I was behind in my podcast listening, so I didn't catch up to this thing until about 3 weeks in, which meant that I was grotesquely behind. But I thought, why have I never read War and Peace? So I imagine I could have read War and Peace in 1918-19 during the Spanish flu. But would I have, had there not been that explicit invitation, this idea that people around the world were going to be reading War and Peace with me? Maybe not.
Let's talk a little bit about our wider music community, because you're so in tune with talking with orchestras or in Canada and probably abroad as well, and being in tune with how musicians are dealing with this. What are your concerns about how the pandemic has impacted musicians?
So one of the things that I think I had not fully acknowledged is how intricately wired orchestral musicians are. And there's a pattern to the season. There's a sense of responsibility and obligation around being so prepared for rehearsal. There is the time that they spend together, learning and working together as a unit, honing their skills. Sometimes they love one another. Sometimes the relationships are a bit more challenged. There are good days on stage and in the practice room, and less good days. But there's an entire just laser beam focus on being in the right place at the right time with the right sound, the right articulation, that whole thing. And it's one thing to say, I'm really tired at the end of the season, I'm going to take 2 weeks off playing and then I'll come back. It's another thing to have it taken away from you, sort of brutally ripped away mid-season. And when you think about the kind of talent development and honing tube that these folks have been in for so long, finding the instrument that they were going to pursue, having all of the developmental experiences along the way, auditioning probably repeatedly for the next opportunity, the right thing, getting that job, getting tenure in that job, being a good colleague, a strong contributor. to the musical and social and working life of the orchestra, and suddenly to have that disappear completely. It's a little bit like, you're zooming along at 120 kilometers an hour and then you put the parking brake on. It's not good for your car. It's not good for people. And so, some of what I observed was just deep dislocation and deep grief, certain sense of being lost. And, I think initially, I talked about this in another setting, and I said, maybe we thought it was going to be like a snow day. Yippee, we don't have to go to school. We can put on our snow pants and go tobogganing. And then it turns out that it's a lot longer, and that the pace at which our lives can return to what they were before is unpredictable, and that the changes might be longer, they might be permanent. Who are we, and what does that mean? And so for people from whom so much has been expected in terms of the rewards for the laser beam focus on being so good at these things, to suddenly not have a place to express that, I think has been really, really tough. We've rewarded them for being so focused. And suddenly that turns into the thing that makes it very hard to be them right now.
So on that, it's a nice segue into thinking about the future now. At this very moment, many announcements have been made by major cultural institutions despite government easing up, that they will not be presenting their concert series, their event, their festival in a traditional format. I think it was a few weeks ago that I can't remember which Canadian music organization had commissioned a survey of music connoisseurs asking, will you return? And at that point, many said that they would not return for a certain time period. And how do you, sorry, it's maybe a little weird to ask somebody to try to predict the future here, but how do you see performing organizations being able to present performances again?
The main source of excitement for me, and the main potential through this period of time, which is of course tremendously challenging, is the idea that an orchestra may be an incredibly impressive, indivisible army, as we see them. It might also be a collection of highly distinct talents and sounds and potential and powers of articulation and imagination and jokes and charisma. They are highly distinct individuals with really intriguing perspectives that make them distinctly and magically themselves. So, having said that, if we have an opportunity to say, the orchestra might actually be 10 times more fascinating as individuals than we necessarily see them as a collective, then let's have fun with that. Who are these people? And what can they do by themselves and collectively to surprise, delight, engage, and themselves transform in the process of connecting with people who might never walk into the concert hall because of all of the baggage of what a concert hall is and looks like and what it costs and what the social rituals are that are attached to that. Like, what happens if we just blow the whole thing up and say, this isn't about putting on live performances in a venue. This is about connecting people to music and helping to unlock their love of music and their desire to participate in it. What if that's the gift of COVID? Longer term, I have to believe that there will be full orchestral concerts in real time with live audience in where there's more people in the audience than there is on stage. I believe that will come to pass, and I'm hoping like heck that the lessons that are learned are ones that will be applied to the design of future seasons.
We're having a great conversation here, and a lot of a lot of things you're bringing up, great ideas and perspectives about the wider music community. But just to end, I want to touch upon for you personally, how, how has the pandemic changed how you think of yourself as a musician and a person?
Um, I'll start by saying that I'm probably a bit damaged by my initial ambitions early in my life around performing and being a clarinet player and pursuing that. And that, you know, I quit for 25 years, not because I was mentally healthy and happy about the choice, but because I felt I needed to put it away, in part uh, to demonstrate my respect for the people who had the ability and the mental and emotional toughness to pursue a career as performing as a performing clarinetist, which were things that I either on the ability side or the sort of emotional and mental toughness did not possess. And I just wanted to say, that's you. That's what you do. I admire you. I support you. Um, and you know, forget about me. um, and I think what this may have done for me, this interesting period of time that will continue for I don't know how much longer, is to say that I am a musician. I am a clarinet player. Um, this defines who I am, um, and I do it in a different way, at a different level, but it is my way and my level, and I am continually pushing what I can do and express and to take on. And, you know, maybe by the time I'm 98, I'll be ready to audition for the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. But you know what? I don't actually care. What I do care about is that it's a pursuit that brings shape and life and meaning to my day. It makes me smile. Sometimes on a really good day, it makes the people around me smile. And it may very well be that it's time to stop apologizing and just own um, this is what I, this is a key part of who I am and what I do. Uh, and it brings me great delight. I invite you to delight with me and leave it there. I know who I'd rather listen to than me, but this is me.
That's a wonderful way to end on a great note, because we need inspiration from a lot of places, and I think in the end, whatever restrictions we might have in life, either external or internal to what we do, I think in the end, that's what we're always just searching for: two things, purpose and happiness, right? And if sometimes we need sometimes unfortunate, you know, big events to happen to remind us of that, I guess that's a nice outcome of otherwise what has been sort of a hard time in our world's history. That's for sure. So
How are you doing, Frank?
I'm doing great, honestly. I don't know how much you know about my journey, but over the years, I've had my battles with mental health issues and so forth. And
I mean, you write about it quite openly.
yes, yeah, I've been quite open about it, and even composing music on the theme, and using my composition as a platform for that. But I've been feeling really great during the pandemic, and personally, because of the fact that like I just said, I feel like I have a purpose. For me, it was important. It was very important when everything went down. Like many others, I'm also a performer, a pianist, and I had many things, events that were supposed to happen, premieres, concerts I was supposed to present. Many things were canceled, just like everyone else. And it's just like, and a full itinerary of spring and summer events, um, and then I thought to myself, well, what do I do now? You know, what can I do which is relevant to the world that I'm living in right now, and also hope use as a basis to connect with fellow musicians. And that's how that idea was born. But I think that a lot of the work that I've done personally to try to make myself manage mental health issues like depression, I'm reaping the rewards of all the hard work in the last bunch of years, because I was able to not get down by this and think creatively, think outside of the box, not be too rigid in making any plans. I think that's a big takeaway from me. That's I've been a big life lesson here. Don't plan too much. You know, expect any plans. If you want to make plans, that's fine, but just assume they're going to get all thrown out, you know, at any given moment, you know.
Man plans, God laughs.
That's right, exactly. How grateful I am that we've had these tools to stay connected, you know. Um, it's just, what would we do without them, as far as working on a project that I started here, and that you've collaborated with, and connecting with musicians all around the world. I mean,
No,
we've always known that the internet would make us a global village, right? But now, I mean, we really know it. You know, I'm seeing more people that live on the other side of the world than I do that live down the street now. It's sort of eerie, you know. That's how I've been surviving and keeping my spirits up, you know. So, and I hope other people, if they haven't been able to do that, I hope they're starting to figure that out, you know, at this point, because they really need to. I mean, we are surrounded by so many wonderful, talented people that it would just be a travesty if the what's happening now, or the outcome of this, they can't regain. That's my biggest fear right now for a lot of friends, you know, or colleagues. Will they be able to rebound out of this, you know? And I don't think we're having enough of a conversation about that right now.
well, let me perhaps conclude with a little bit of a word play um, from some people I know. You know, they're talking about, you know, is resilience bouncing back or is it bouncing forward? Right? And I think this is the big question for me, is how do we individually, because we must take care of ourselves and be smart about ourselves, but also collectively, how do we bounce forward? Because bouncing back probably isn't good enough. It wasn't so awesome before. And I think all of the things that have gone on through this period of time and the reflection, you know, around the murder of George Floyd, um, sort of conversation about the distinctly Canadian thinking around inequities based on race, a still very um, dysfunctional relationship with Indigenous peoples, and just the whole sort of conversation about who we are and what we say, and what's true about what we say, and what really requires some spacious reflection and action. So, as I say, I think bouncing back isn't good enough. That it must be about bouncing forward, and it must be an inclusive bounce.
Indeed, and I think the timing of our society's renewed faith in eradicating inequality has been apropos to happen during the time of the pandemic. I think there was something innate that they're going to be related to each other moving forward. Even things like climate change, human rights, the pandemic. I think
Yes.
these are all the basis of promoting change for the good for our world, out of necessity for practical health matters, but also I think it's going to inspire and influence those other things too. So thank you so much for this. This has been very enlightening. We'll see how everything develops, but for now, there's been a lot of great ideas that I personally feel good about, and that we were able to discuss today. So thank you very much for this. I appreciate it.
It's been a complete privilege, and may I suggest a socially distanced tea at some point when it's safe to do so.
Absolutely. I definitely look forward to that. Thank
Great,
you.
my pleasure. Thank you.